They say Chicago never sleeps. The city hums with life. Traffic rolling down Michigan Avenue, neon buzzing over late-night diners, trains rattling across steel bridges. But if you drive these streets long enough, if you prowl the back roads and forgotten neighborhoods when the hour grows late, you'll find out that the city doesn't just stay awake. It remembers. And sometimes it shows you things you were never meant to see. I'm a rideshare driver. I've spent years behind the wheel, ferrying strangers through the heart of Chicago. I've seen drunks passed out in my backseat, couples fighting, kids trying to score drugs. I thought I'd seen it all, but nothing prepared me for her. They call her the black-eyed woman of Chicago. An urban legend, a ghost story whispered between drivers on slow nights. Some say she's a demon. Some say she's the restless spirit of a woman killed along Lower Wacker Drive. Others claim she's a warning, the embodiment of every dark thing the city tries to hide. I thought it was just a story, until the night I picked her up. And once you see her, once you look into those eyes, nothing is ever the same again. Chicago at night has two faces. There's the bright, loud city tourists know, skyscrapers glowing against the lake, crowded bars spilling laughter into the streets, music echoing from every corner. But when you drive for hours, weaving through neighborhoods most people wouldn't step foot in after dark, you see the other side. The quiet, hollow streets. Blocks where every window is black, where the only light comes from the distant flicker of a broken street lamp. The kind of silence that feels wrong, like the city itself is holding its breath. That's the side I worked. I was doing 12-hour shifts back then, anything to make rent. It didn't matter if it was 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. If the app pinged, I went. And Chicago at 3 in the morning is something else entirely. The roads stretch out like veins under the city's skin. Bridges creak. The river reflects only darkness. The wind cuts through the alleys and moans against old brick. It was on nights like these that I first heard about her. Drivers swap stories to stay awake. Some swear they've picked up Al Capone's ghost, their old speakeasies. Others talk about the vanishing hitchhiker who disappears before reaching Lakeshore Drive. But there was one story that kept popping up, told in nervous laughs and half-serious whispers. The black-eyed woman. She only comes out after midnight, one driver said. Always alone, always pale. And whatever you do, don't look her in the eyes. I laughed it off. But there was something in the way he said it. Something about the way his voice cracked on that last part that stuck with me. That night, I couldn't shake it. I kept glancing in the rear view, half expecting someone to be sitting there. The empty seat stared back at me. Around 2:45 a.m., the app buzzed. A pickup request came in, Lower Wacker Drive. For those who don't know, Lower Wacker is a stretch of road beneath downtown, a tangle of concrete and steel. No sunlight ever reaches down there. It's where the city hides its shadows, where rats scurry, steam hisses from grates, and echoes carry longer than they should. Most drivers avoided it. Too many carjackings, too many stories, but a ride was a ride. I accepted. The pin dropped at an intersection where the streetlights had long since died. My GPS froze. The little arrow stuck as though it didn't want to move forward. I cursed it under my breath and kept driving. When I pulled up to the spot, there she was. At first, she looked like any other passenger, standing perfectly still on the curb. Dressed in black, her face hidden by the glow of my headlights. But something about her was wrong. She didn't move when I stopped, didn't wave, didn't even blink. She just stood there waiting. And though I couldn't see her eyes yet, I swear to God, even from inside the car, I felt them on me. I sat there with the engine idling, waiting for her to move. Most passengers give at least a wave, maybe a quick nod before opening the door. Not her. She just stood there, motionless, like a shadow carved out of the night. Finally, I leaned over, rolled the passenger window down a crack, and called out, "Hey, are you waiting for a ride?" No answer. Her head tilted slightly, as if the sound of my voice wasn't what she expected. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and slid into the back seat. The smell hit first. Cold air, not just chilly, cold, like the kind you feel in a basement where the sun has never reached. My heater was running full blast, but it didn't matter. The temperature in the car dropped 10 degrees the second she shut the door. Where you headed?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Silence. I glanced at the app. No destination entered. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes people gave directions on the fly. I waited, hoping she'd speak up. Still nothing. I looked in the rearview mirror. She was sitting perfectly straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, skin pale as candle wax, lips colorless, pressed into the faintest line. Her hair was long and black, falling around her face like a curtain. But what got me most was the way she was staring forward, not at me, not at the window, but straight ahead, unblinking, like she was watching something only she could see. "All right," I said, forcing a laugh. "Guess I'll just start driving. You can tell me where to go." I pulled out onto Lower Wacker, the sound of my tires echoing through the empty tunnels. She didn't move, didn't shift, didn't even breathe loud enough for me to hear. Every few seconds, I snuck glances at the mirror. Each time, I expected her to look back, but she never did. Just that fixed forward stare. Something about it set my teeth on edge. After a few blocks, I tried again. "So, rough night?" Nothing. The silence in the car grew heavy, pressing against my chest. The only sound was the low hum of the engine and the faint rattle of my air vents. Then, just as I was about to speak again, I heard it. A whisper, so soft I thought I imagined it. I froze, gripping the wheel tighter. The whisper came again, low, breathless, impossible to make out, but I knew it came from the back seat. I glanced in the mirror. Her lips hadn't moved. She was still staring dead ahead. My throat tightened. "Sorry, what was that?" No answer. But now, I was sure of it. She was whispering. The sound filled the space between us, like smoke curling through the air. Words I couldn't understand, muttered in a voice that was too soft, too unnatural. The hairs on my arms stood up. "Look," I said, my voice cracking. "If you don't tell me where you're going, I can't." That's when she moved. Not much. Just her head, slowly turning toward the mirror. And for the first time, I saw her eyes. They weren't just dark. They weren't brown. They weren't shadowed. They were black, completely, impossibly black. No whites. No pupils. Just two empty voids, staring straight into me. My chest seized up. I almost slammed on the brakes. Her lips parted, and in that same soft whisper, she said a single word. "Drive." I didn't believe the stories. Not until I saw her for myself. It was just past midnight when I left a friend's apartment on the south side of Chicago. The city was quieter than usual, the streets washed in that pale orange glow from the old sodium lamps. My car was parked a few blocks away, and with every step I took, I felt the weight of the silence pressing in. No cars, no footsteps, no distant sirens. Just me, and the faint hum of electricity from the lamps overhead. That's when I noticed her. At the far end of the street, Half hidden by the shadows, a woman stood perfectly still. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a pale dress that didn't match the chill in the October air. At first, I thought she might be lost. Or maybe drunk, the way she swayed ever so slightly. But then she lifted her head and looked right at me. Her eyes were wrong. They weren't just dark. They weren't just empty. They were black. Pitch black, swallowing the light around them like two holes burned into the world. The sight froze me where I stood, like my body was refusing to move, even as every instinct screamed to run. And then, she smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even human. It was too wide, stretching too far, like her mouth was fighting against the limits of her own skin. I blinked, and she was gone. The street was empty again. Just the flicker of a buzzing street lamp and the cold air wrapping around me like a shroud. I told myself I was tired. Maybe I'd had one too many drinks back at the apartment. Maybe I imagined her, but deep down, I knew what I'd seen. The next night I dreamed of her. In the dream, I was back on that same street, standing under the orange lamps. But this time, she wasn't at the end of the block. She was right in front of me, inches away. Her black eyes were bottomless pits, dragging me toward them, pulling at my thoughts, my breath, my soul. And when I woke, the smell of her perfume lingered in my room, sweet and rotten. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was stress. But over the next week, I started to notice something. She was everywhere. I'd glance across the subway platform, and there she'd be, standing still, her head tilted, watching me from the shadows. I'd look out the bus window and see her reflection standing in the aisle, even though no one was there. One night, walking home, I caught her in the reflection of a store window, standing directly behind me. When I spun around, the sidewalk was empty. I stopped sleeping. I stopped leaving the lights off at night. Every corner of my apartment felt like it was hiding her. Every dark shadow seemed to shift, to breathe, to move when I wasn't looking. And then came the knock. It was 3:17 in the morning. 3 sharp raps against my apartment door. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady, patient. I froze. The knocking came again. 3 knocks, then silence. I crept to the peephole, holding my breath. At first, I saw nothing. Just the empty hallway. But then, movement. A woman stepped into view. Pale skin, long dark hair. That same pale dress fluttering slightly, even though the hallway was still. And those eyes. Black, endless, waiting. Her lips curled into that too wide smile. She leaned forward, closer to the peephole, and then she whispered, "Let me in." I stumbled back, heart pounding, as the knob rattled once, twice, and then went still. The hallway fell silent again. For the rest of the night, I sat curled in the corner of my room, every light on, clutching a baseball bat that felt useless against whatever she was. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke, the door was unlocked. I know I locked it. I know I did. And on the floor, pressed into the wood just beneath the peephole, was a single wet handprint, too small to be real, too cold to be human. I used to think I was alone, that maybe the black-eyed woman was haunting just me, feeding on my fear, following me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. But Chicago has a way of keeping its secrets until they spill into the cracks of the city. The first time I realized it wasn't just me was at a diner on 35th. I'd stopped in for coffee, desperate to stay awake. Anything to keep from dreaming of her. There was another guy at the counter, rough-looking, eyes sunken, hands shaking as he stirred his cup. He caught me staring and laughed under his breath. "You see her too, don't you?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't said a word. "She follows me home sometimes," he muttered, keeping his eyes fixed on the coffee. Black eyes, smile too wide. Thought I was losing it. Until now. He didn't wait for me to answer. He just slid a crumpled napkin across the counter and left. On it, scrawled in shaky handwriting, were 3 words: "Don't look back." That night, I started asking questions. And the more I asked, the more stories came crawling out of the city's underbelly. A nurse at a hospital on the west side swore she saw a woman with black eyes standing in the reflection of a patient as heart monitor. An old man at a bus stop said she whispered his name, though no one else heard it. A teenager on the Red Line claimed she followed him all the way from 95th to Howard, vanishing every time he turned to face her. Different people, different neighborhoods, same woman, same black eyes. The legend wasn't new, it was just buried. The oldest story I found came from a retired detective. He told me about a string of disappearances back in the 1970s. Young women, all last seen near abandoned buildings on the south side. The police found no bodies, no evidence. Just one detail the reports never printed in the papers. Witnesses said the missing girls were seen talking to a woman with eyes like ink poured over glass. The detective leaned closer, his voice shaking despite his years. "She's not a ghost," he whispered. "She's something else, something that chooses you." And then he said something that stuck with me ever since. "You don't find her, she finds you." The stories piled higher. Bus drivers who refused to take certain late-night routes. Security guards who quit after seeing her on their cameras. Standing in empty hallways at 3 a.m. A priest who admitted, after one too many drinks, that people had come to him begging for exorcisms, but he wouldn't touch it. He said those eyes weren't demonic. They were worse. The more I dug, the more the city itself seemed to change. The air felt heavier, streetlights buzzed louder. Every reflective surface, windows, mirrors, puddles on the street, became a trap. Because sometimes when I looked into them, she looked back. I started avoiding glass altogether. I covered the mirrors in my apartment. I crossed the street to avoid storefronts. But reflections are everywhere in a city like Chicago. You can't escape them. And the more I tried not to see her, the closer she seemed to get. One night, I took a shortcut through an alley off Wabash. It was supposed to be empty, quiet, but halfway through, I heard footsteps echoing behind me. I remembered the napkin, the warning, "Don't look back." The steps grew louder, faster. They didn't match mine. They were too long, too deliberate. My chest tightened, my hands trembled. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, but I didn't. I ran. And when I burst out onto the street, gasping for air, I risked one glance into the glass door of a closed shop. She was there, inches behind me. Her black eyes locked on mine through the reflection. Her mouth stretched open, wider, wider, too wide for a human face. And then the glass cracked. A spider web of fractures shot across the door, though nothing had touched it. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and when I looked again, she was gone. But the cracks remained. Everywhere I turned, the city carried her fingerprints. Broken mirrors, flickering lights. Strangers whispering about a woman with black eyes. It wasn't just my haunting anymore. It was Chicago's. And the more I listened to the stories, the more I realized something terrifying. No one ever saw her twice and lived a normal life again. There's a comfort we all take for granted. The idea that when you close your door at night, lock it, Draw the blinds, you're safe. But what happens when the thing you're running from doesn't need doors? What happens when it doesn't wait outside? That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me back from the alley. The cracked glass on Wabash, the echo of her footsteps. It clung to me like smoke. I checked the locks 3 times. I shut every curtain. I left the lights burning bright, as if electricity could scare her away. But fear has a way of growing in silence. It started small, a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging along wood. I froze. It was coming from the bathroom door. Step by step, I crept closer, every muscle in my body tense. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. I yanked the door open. Nothing. Just the mirror over the sink, covered in the sheet I'd nailed there weeks ago. I laughed, but it was hollow. The kind of laugh you force when you're on the edge of losing your mind. And then, the scratching came again, only this time from behind the sheet. I backed away slowly, my breath caught in my throat. The fabric shifted, just slightly, as if something was brushing against it from the other side. Then, silence. I told myself it was my imagination. I told myself not to look. But some part of me, some stupid reckless part, needed to know. With shaking hands, I tore the sheet down. The mirror was cracked. Not broken before, cracked now. As if something had struck it from inside. And in the fractured glass, I didn't see myself. I saw her. The black-eyed woman was standing in my bathroom, her face stretched across a dozen shards, every angle showing that same wide smile, those endless black eyes. I spun around. The room was empty. But in the mirror, she was still there, tilting her head, watching me. Her lips moved soundlessly, but the words pressed into my skull like nails. Let me in. I stumbled back, tripping over the doorframe, slamming it shut. My chest felt like it was caving in, my pulsed drumbeat in my ears. I pressed my weight against the door like it would matter. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and went out. The darkness swallowed me whole. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, waiting for her to break through. But when the power finally returned, when the lights hummed back to life, the mirror was whole again. No cracks, no reflection of her, just me. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was a hallucination. That stress and sleepless nights had finally pushed me over the edge. But then I saw the footprints. Wet, bare footprints leading from the bathroom into my living room. Too small for mine, too delicate, but unmistakably real. They stopped at the couch and vanished. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every sound became a threat, every shadow a trap. And when dawn finally broke, painting the city in pale gray light, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd survived. Until I opened my fridge. Inside, scrawled on the fogged glass of a milk bottle, was a message written with a fingertip. You let me in. I dropped it, milk splattering across the kitchen tiles, my heart slamming against my ribs, because it wasn't just a haunting anymore. It was an invasion. She wasn't outside. She wasn't in reflections. The black-eyed woman was here. And she wasn't leaving. There's a saying in Chicago, you can't outrun the cold. No matter how fast you move, no matter how many layers you put on, it finds you. And after weeks of trying to ignore her, hide from her, shut her out, I realized the black-eyed woman was the same. I couldn't outrun her. The city had grown stranger since she came inside. Every sound was sharper. Every shadow stretched too long. It wasn't just in mirrors anymore. I caught glimpses of her in storefront windows, car doors, even the glass face of my watch. And each time, she was closer. By the third night, I stopped turning on lights. What was the point? She was there whether I could see her or not. The wet footprints came back, night after night, tracking across my floor. Sometimes they led to the bathroom, sometimes to the couch. Once I found them leading to my bed. The sheet was pulled halfway down, like someone had climbed in beside me. That was the night I knew it had to end. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have courage. Just desperation. I lit every candle I could find, lined them across the apartment. A foolish little fortress of wax and flame. And then I waited. At first nothing. Just the creak of the building, the hum of the city outside. I almost laughed at myself. Almost blew the candles out. But then, the air shifted. It was subtle, like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees all at once. The flames shivered, bending toward the bathroom door. That's when I heard it. A voice. Low, distorted. Like it was dragging itself through broken glass. Closer. The knob turned, slow, deliberate. And then she stepped out. The black-eyed woman wasn't just a shadow anymore. She was there. In my apartment. Her skin was pale as bone, her hair clinging to her face like wet ropes. And those eyes. Those impossible, endless pits of black, swallowing the candlelight whole. She smiled, wide, too wide. You let me in. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body wouldn't listen. She moved closer with each blink, the room shrinking around her. I backed into the corner, candles trembling around me. My heart hammered so hard it felt like it would break my ribs. Why me? The words ripped out of me before I could stop them. My voice was small, childlike, her head tilted as if the question was amusing. And then, for the first time, she spoke clearly. Because you saw me. The words sliced through the silence. They made no sense, and yet, they made perfect sense. All those stories, all those warnings, the black-eyed woman wasn't random. She chose those who noticed, who couldn't look away. And now, I was hers. The candles blew out, one by one, snuffed like dying stars. The darkness folded in, and the last thing I saw was her face inches from mine, smiling wider, those black eyes drowning me whole. Then, nothing, no breath, just the hollow weight of silence. When I woke, it wasn't morning. It wasn't even my apartment. I was standing on Wabash Avenue. The same alley where I'd first seen her reflection. The city was quiet, empty, as if every soul had been erased. And in the broken glass of a shop window, I saw her again. Only this time, it wasn't her alone. It was me. My eyes black as hers. My smile stretched wide. And I understood. The black-eyed woman doesn't haunt. She doesn't stalk. She multiplies. Every person she claims becomes her. And somewhere right now as you listen, someone else is seeing me in the reflection of their own window. And they won't look away. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed this tale of the black-eyed woman of Chicago, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, some legends are closer than you think.